Welcome to YesJapan.com Ask a Teacher number 84. Third time's a charm. My wife has dropped off a table. I have put it away. My daughters have done cheerleading right here in the office on camera for everybody in the stream. Yes, it was exciting. Lots of things happened. There's like a 14 million year delay on our stream. So if anything goes wrong on the stream, I get notices. But typically this is what happens. Something goes wrong on the stream. Then I fix it and I say, everything's cool. But that's like 2 minutes in the future for everybody. So they're panicking. They're like, oh, there's no sound. I can't hear. Oh, he's talking. He's saying something important. I better text message him. Then I'm like, okay, cool, let's just start this again. Hi, I'm George Trump. Bring, text messages come. And all of a sudden, I gotta start again because I lost my mojo. That's what just happened. I lost all my mojo right now. That's okay though. You know what I got? Eye of the Tiger. That's right, I got Eye of the Tiger. And for those of you that watch the stream, the live stream, sometimes you get bonus things. You'll never ever see me release things like that. But trust me, I got Eye of the Tiger. I'm not messing around. I said I'm doing a double header today, and I am. Now, this is the third time I've done this, and now I finally know what this guy was asking. At first I was confused. Now I know, because it's like the third time answering it. This is Yes Japan, Ask a Teacher. Guess who's the teacher? It's me. Woo! All right, here we go. First question is from Taco Cat. I really like this question. Given that when meeting strangers, the must form is polite enough, is the polite passive, parentheses, addressing someone with passive to be more polite, ever used outside of company or customer settings? Is that part of keigo, which means formal Japanese? Well, when I first read this question, I didn't know what you were talking about. So before I get to the answer of your question, I want to address something I think is really important when you're studying Japanese about the must form. All right? Must form itself is not keigo. Must form itself is just a polite way of speaking. And do Japanese people use must form every day? Yes. Every single day they use must form with their friends even though when you first meet somebody, and in situations where you are lower in status of somebody, you're going to use keigo or standard polite Japanese. I typically don't like to use keigo. I typically use standard polite Japanese. I think it's too much, especially for a foreigner. But Japanese people also typically just use standard polite. Now, there are people that don't do that because everyone's got a different personality. You know these people even in America where everything they say is polite. And they don't say, oh my God, they say, oh my goodness. And they're sort of goody two-shoes feeling. Those exact people exist in Japan. And then there are the people that are super polite in America, like, well, I don't mean to invalidate what you just said, but however, I have the position that, and they talk like that, but you would never talk like that, ever. You wouldn't, because you're like, no, I hear what you're saying, but basically my opinion is totally different, and you'll talk like that. You're going to talk normal, right? So, that being said, remember that there is no everybody in Japan. There is no rule that works for everywhere, right? For example, you are a foreigner. Do you have to speak keigo? Nope, you don't. And guess what? I'm learning Korean, and there's multi-levels of politeness. I'm going to learn like 2. And then I'll learn the other ones later and figure out when to use them. But in the beginning, screw it. We don't until level 4, we don't even teach you one formal Japanese. Did you know that? Not even one. Because until you get good, you don't need it and it's not expected. Now, I just did a workout. I'll tell you what, I'm a little bit, I guess I had to clear my mind. I had to do a little workout here. Eye of the Tiger. That's what I want to say, Eye of the Tiger. All right. Now, before I answer your question, I might have already answered it. I want to talk about that must thing that you were talking about. Because some people might think must is just one thing, right? But it's not. Must is so common. What is must? It's the polite verb ending. Let's look at one verb only. It's the verb iku. Now on this iPad, you see iku, ikeru, ikaseru, ikasareru, right? You see what looks like 4 verbs. But in the dictionary, only one will show up. Iku. Iku, to go. The other verbs that you see there are conjugations of iku. All right? I'm not going to go through all of the detail about how you conjugate them and how you get there, because this is sort of an advanced question, but iku means to go. Ikeru means to be able to go. Ikaseru means to make go. Ikasareru means to be made to go. All right, or to be forced to go. But look at all of these verbs, and you'll notice a little pattern. First of all, you see that 3 of them end in ru, that's pure coincidence, and 1 of them ends in ku. But the main pattern is they all end in an u form hiragana. These are what we're going to call the base form. They're the base. Iku is the dictionary form because it's in the dictionary. The rest are just base forms of a new conjugation. When you take a verb and you conjugate it, for example, iku, to go, when you want to make it into the to go form, it's a pattern that every verb can follow if it's a regular verb. The last ku form, or u form hiragana, which is ku, changes to the e form, which is ke. Then you add a ru. Ikeru. Now, what kind of a verb is ikeru? If you watched Yes Japan Daily number 90, you might remember me talking about this. But what is ikeru? It's an iru-eru verb. What makes an iru-eru verb? Really simple. The last 2 sounds in the verb rhyme with iru or eru. There are some exceptions, but we're not talking about those today. Ikeru. So even though iku is a regular verb, ikeru is an iru-eru verb. The only difference between iku and ikeru is that. And iku, when you conjugate it, you change that last hiragana ku to something else, right? A ke or a ko or a ki, depending on what you're doing. But with iru-eru verbs, there's a simple rule. It's iru-eru, drop the ru. So you end up with ikeru, right? Ikeru. Now there's similar rules to make ikaseru. It's a form plus seru. Ikaseru, that means to make someone go. I'll make them go. Ikasemasu. Okay, I just talked about this the other day. Ikasareru means to be made to go. But notice that they can all be conjugated, and they're all the new conjugations. These last 3, they're iru-eru verbs, so you're going to drop the ru, right? So if you want to make ikeru polite, what do? Think about it. Ikemasu. That is the polite form of I can go. Ikemasu ka? Can you go? Hai, ikemasu. Ikaseru, ikasemasu. Ikasemasu ka? Will you make them go? Hai, ikasemasu. Ikasareru, ikasaremasu. I will be made to go. Ikasaremashita ka? Were you made to go? Hai, ikasaremashita. Now what he is talking about, that was my point, by the way. That was my point, that mas, masen, mashita is like a master conjugation form that applies to all the other forms you learn later on. And even when you go into informal, you're just, nai is the same way. Ike nai, right? Ikase nai. Those are informal ways of saying masen, right? So that's why you learn those first on Yes Japan and in Japanese from Zero. That's why most books teach you those first. Because later on, when you're doing more complicated conjugations, you really are just bringing the verb up to a different level. You're saying, this was the base, this was the initial. Iku, this is this part of the mountain. Then you put some rope up and you climb up to the other part of the mountain. Boom, now you've got ikeru, but you can still climb more mountains. There's still more things. I don't know if that made any sense. But there's still more to do with that verb. But you start with a new base. That's your new base camp. It's ikeru. Now ikeru, you imagine, is its own verb. It just happens to mean to be able to go. And you can't conjugate it into the to be able to go form because it's already to be able to go. That's the only difference. You can go backwards, but you can't go forward with that one, right? All right. Ooh, God, I think I shouldn't have said that last part. That probably confused you. Anyway, my point is that you can't say can be able to can do. You can't do that. It's when you're already in can do form, you can't make it more can do, right? Now, back to your point. So there's a thing that Japanese people do. He's saying using the passive form to be more polite. They do this, and I'm not even sure if it's actually the passive form, but it probably is, right? For example, ikareru means means ikareru. Ikareru. We don't even have that. Ikareru. We don't have that. We don't have ikareru. Let me get a different verb then. Taberareru. So taberareru is passive form. It means to be eaten. But it also means, are you going to eat? Taberaremasu ka? Will you be eating? In a very, very polite form. I would say that yes, that is part of keigo. That is the answer. But your question was, do they use it outside of company and people above you time formats? Do you use it with friends? With must? It's a good question. I would say no, because it doesn't make sense to use such a polite form without must. It's like, pardon me, sir, will you be getting the hell out of town tonight? It's a weird thing if you're saying it in a very polite way to say, pardon me, sir, what the hell are you doing in my home? Well, that might be good. But you'd probably say, what are you doing here, right? You wouldn't say, excuse me, but would you mind telling me what you're doing in the presence of my home? You wouldn't say that in an informal way. So my answers are all my opinion. I'm sure you'll find the Japanese person that will tell you different, because remember, they're all different types of Japanese people. And then you will find Japanese people that agree with me. Rikaichan in the chat room, I know she's in there right now. She's in here quite often. I'm pretty sure she's still here. Ask her. Ask her if she would ever say to her friend, "Ashita ikaremasu ka?" Ask her. She might. She's a very polite girl. But ask her if she would say, "Ashita ikareru?" Nope. She wouldn't say "Ashita ikareru." Probably wouldn't say that. Ikimasu ka would be the more common way to say it, and it's still polite enough. Ashita ikimasu ka? But maybe to her boss, again, in the company, like you said, yes, definitely she might use that, depending on how well she knows her boss. I know that when Kanako used to work here, a very, very polite Japanese girl, she was almost always using must forms, but she would never use keigo with me. She wouldn't need to, because we were familiar with each other, all right? All right, well, gosh, I hope that came off as better than I thought. I hope it came off better than it feels. I hope you guys understood. Now for the next question. Next question is from Zolam. Is there anything in Japanese that doesn't make sense to you at all? And if yes, why? Well, the answer to that is, hai. Yeah, of course. For the rest of my life, there will be things that I don't understand in Japanese. You guys are all just now beginning to study, or you're at a midpoint. I'm done. I mean, I think it's time for the class to come up, but I'm done learning Japanese, right? I'm on to my next thing. I'm learning Korean. But do I know all Japanese? No, not by a long shot, because I'll watch TV and I'll get it almost all the time, like everything. I'll follow it. But I don't get everything. There might be one or two words that I don't know. And certainly depending on the conversation, I could miss out on a whole conversation because it only takes 4 or 5 words that are, if you're watching a news story about nuclear submarines or some new bacteria that they found, well, maybe I'm not going to know the word for a bacteria going, a cell doing mitosis or whatever. I might not know that word. And then I would get lost trying to figure it out. So yeah, there's a lot of things I don't understand. Matter of fact, in the chat room just the other night, Haru and Rie were talking back and forth. And I didn't know what they were talking about. There was one word I didn't know, and I didn't feel like looking it up. I knew all the grammar around it, but it's one word I didn't know. It wasn't worth my time. So yeah, so is there a lot I don't know? Yep. But am I comfortable with it? Yeah. I'm at the level I want to be. I don't need to. A lot of people, they cram on these Anki things, SRS. I have friends that know more words than me, that were students of mine, that knew nothing when they started, and they know more than me, all right? They know words that I don't know. But do I need those words? No, I certainly don't. And I'm not going to be cramming with an SRS Anki-like system for Korean. Matter of fact, I got this Korean card set. Am I going to use every word in here? No. If there's words that I feel like are worthless, I'm taking them out of the set. I think with 1,000 cards, though, I'm not going to have that problem. I think there's going to be words in here I'm going to use. It doesn't mean that those words won't ever come up in usage, but do I need to cram my brain with it right now? No, because I'm not there yet, right? So, yeah, a lot of things I don't know. Good question, though. And I would warn you guys, really warn you guys, if you're going to use Anki, why not make your own set? look up words in your life. Do you really need to know how to say municipality at this point? Do you really need to know how to say minister of the right? Do you need, are these are things you don't need, oscillation? Do you need to know oscillation? Because I've seen these words in an Anki deck. And what you do when you're looking for Anki decks is like the biggest, baddest 50,000 word Anki deck. But why? You only have so many days and time and hours in the day to study. So don't overdo it. Seriously, don't overdo it. Like, if you can't say neko and inu, but you can say oscillation, there's a problem, right? All right. That's the same thing with verbs, too. You get those 500 verb books, and you learn all these verbs, but yet you couldn't say walk or run or skip or whatever the word, the generic thing that you do every day, you can't say, but you know how to say to multiply something. That might be important, but when are you going to use that? And here's the thing, when you cram, right? You cram all these words and then you never use them. That happens. I'm sure some people will say I'm wrong. Our next question is from Yes Japan staff, one of our own, Sarah. She says, what are some insta-friendly words / endings / formats, etc., that we could use to make conversation friendly but still polite? Let me address something. The majority of you learning Japanese on Yes Japan, the majority of everybody learning Japanese isn't learning for business. So almost all of your conversations are going to be friendly. They're not going to be intense. Besides, if you're in Japan at a business meeting and the company you're talking to doesn't speak English, they'll always bring in the one girl that speaks English, or they'll have an interpreter. You don't have to know how to even speak at high level. And if you were at that level, you wouldn't need an interpreter, because that's really a lot of things to say, right? And and also, by the way, the meeting wouldn't be that important. If you don't have an interpreter there, it's not that important of a meeting. So it doesn't have to be polite. Everything can be friendly. I just want to point that out. But what are some things you can say? Well, if you're talking with people like you that you've met maybe on the internet or somewhere, and now you're finally meeting them in Japan, or even if you're going back and forth in like chat or something, there are some key things you could say that will show interest. Now, these things that I'm going to teach you are like, you need this just for even talking to people in English. Like, when you're talking to people in English, you go, really? No way. Really? That's awesome. Whoa, are you kidding me? You always say things like that to show, hey, I'm listening to what you're saying, and I find it fascinating. And you do the same thing in Japanese, for example. What? Or just this one. That's like, whoa. Ha. Almost a little H in the beginning there. Alright. 本当に? Oh my god, I just realized. My friend in Niigata does this to me all the time. I just now realized she's probably really not listening to what I'm saying. Because I talk a lot. I can sit in front of the camera and talk a lot without anybody. Think about this. I'm in the room all by myself. And I'm having a conversation with a camera. Camera doesn't even have any eyeballs. It's got one. Anyway. 本当に? I wish the camera every now and then would just say that. 本当に? I'm like, yeah. That's how Japanese grammar works. 本当に? Right? And it doesn't mean that you need to talk anymore with them. It doesn't mean that you're asking them a question. It's sort of rhetorical. They're going to say yeah no matter what. 本当に? Then you can throw this in. Here you go. This is a good one. 面白いよ. That's interesting. 面白い. 面白いよ. You can throw in a すごい. すごいね. 初めて聞いた. I like to say this one. This one I say. 初耳だ. 初耳. First time that entered my ear. 初耳. I learned 初耳 at one point, and it was such a cool phrase, meaning first ear, that I say it all the time now. I don't even know if Japanese people use it. I just know I use it. Like, すげえ, 本当に初耳. First time I heard that. Or, 聞いたことないですよ、それは. Never heard that before. Anything that shows you're engaged. Whew. All right. Next question is from NJME. He says, recently I've seen some verbs that have tada form. That's what rikaichan at least calls it. By the way, I'm sure everyone knows what rikaichan is. If you don't, check it out. It puts furigana on top of the kanji so that you can read it. It's a way to cheat with your kanji. Rikaichan is calling this verb form tada, but I can't find it in my book, so could you please explain it? Yes, I can explain it. I will explain it. You guys have horrible spelling, by the way, when you're sending me these Ask a Teachers. I'm almost giving up on even correcting it anymore, because you guys never see the question. But seriously. Book 4 is where this is covered. On Yes Japan, it's lesson 10. But since I've added a new lesson into book 4, which is coming out very shortly, it's now lesson 11. And I'm going to read directly from it, because it's massively improved over the current version, I believe. I give more detail. All right. Here we go. This is book 4. All right, starts out very simple. Tada is an if-then statement. It's an if verb, right? The tada if-then verb form is made by adding ra to the ta form, which is the informal past tense. The ta form verbs are covered in Course 2, Lesson 9 of Japanese from Zero. It actually says that right there. For example, ittara, if you go. Nondara, if you drink. Tabetara, if you eat. Kattara, if you buy. Genki ni nattara, if you get better. Ooh, that's kind of sad, right? What if you don't get better? If you get better. The if-then statement using the tada form is made very similarly to the nara if-then statement. And it basically shows a little pattern. This is the pattern that we're talking about. I don't know if you can see it. Let me show you here. This might be difficult. You see there it says, moshi, something verb tada, right? So if you're going to verb, blah, 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 blah. All right. Then we give some examples. Try to follow along. See if you can understand, right? Here we go. もしお金がなかったら貸しますよ. And kasu is one of the verbs taught in course 4, lesson 11. もしお金がなかったら貸しますよ. If you don't have money, I will loan some to you. Next one. もし私が家を買ったら見に来てください。わかりますか？もし私が家を買ったら見に来てください。If I buy a house, please come see it. See how that works? It's an if statement. However, tada is one of those awesome verb forms that does two things. The next section of grammar is called using tada verb to mean when. The tada verb form is a super common form because it can be used in a way similar to how toki is used. Toki is how to say ikutoki, when I go, for example. There is really no way to tell when the tada form means when and when it means if. It will mostly be based on the context of the conversation. You will find out that most of the time it could be either version without changing any meaning in the conversation. That's really important to know. So for example, moshi watashi ga, let's say we took out the moshi there. Watashi ga ie o katta ra, if I buy a house or when I buy a house, it's the same thing. Mini kite kudasai, please come see it. Right? If moshi is at the beginning of the if-then statement, then it will certainly be an if-then statement rather than a when statement. Now I've given some examples. We'll just go through two of them. 晩ご飯を食べたら出かけましょう. I don't know if I like that sentence, to be honest with you. I'm going to change that. And again, this book hasn't been through review yet. My wife might not like that either. I don't like it because I would actually say 晩ご飯を食べてから after we eat. After we eat. Let's go out. But let's say that that sentence has no problem. Grammatically, it means 晩ご飯を食べたら when we eat dinner. I still don't like that. Let's move to the next one. I don't like it. Okay. 友達の家に行ったらいつも映画を見ます。友達の家にいたらいつも映画を見ます。わかりますか？ When I go to my friend's house, we always watch movies. So that's what tada does. It is an if thing and a when thing. Alrighty. Hopefully that answered your question. And that's it. If you'd like to be involved with YesJapan.com and get your question answered on Ask a Teacher, it's really, really simple. You don't need a credit card. You don't need PayPal. You just come to a stream when we are doing them. Well, George, when are the streams happening? I have an answer for you. Twitter. Follow us on Twitter. Subscribe. Is it follow? Follow. Follow us on Twitter. It's @YesJapan, and you will get notified. Also, if you are a member of Yes Japan, which I assume you are, because actually, you know what? You can't even get into the stream unless you have a free account. Go to Yes Japan, create a free account, then come to the stream. It'll automatically log you in. All right? There you have it. That is Ask a Teacher number 84. Stick around. We're doing number 85 right now. Bye-bye.